we will see about buses. So buses are electronic interconnections that brings together the various components of a computer system like processor, main memory and IO devices. Based on how these devices interacts with each other, the buses are divided into various types on that protocol which these components uses. So we will see the different types of buses. The first category is synchronous bus. So as the name indicates, the components will be acting or responding to each other's attempts to interact through a synchronized manner. That is, there will be some mechanism that synchronizes the interaction between these components. So here that mechanism is through a signal known as clock, bus clock. Okay. So in the case of synchronous bus, there will be data bus or data bus line, address bus line and command bus line, and along with separate lines for clock cycles. And we will consider this case, that is figure 4.23 from the textbook Computer Organization by Carl Hamacher. And here the operation shown is an input operation, and this operation is assumed to last for one bus clock cycle. So it means that within one bus clock cycle the entire operation will be complete. Okay, so we will see how this happens. So we will talk in terms of master and slave, and we know that master is the entity which initiates the transfer and slave is the entity which satisfies the requirement of the master, right? So suppose that our CPU is the master and RAM is the slave, and CPU has requested some area of RAM to be read into it. What happens is CPU will put the required address and the read command onto the system bus, especially the address and command bus lines. Okay, this happens at time t0. So by the time t1, RAM is supposed to recognize the address that CPU has issued or the master has issued, namely its address and the command, that is read command, and be ready with the data to be transferred to the master. So by t1 the slave will have the data ready, and between the time interval t2 to t1 the slave will put the required data that has been requested by the master onto the bus. So this is the ideal operation of a synchronous bus protocol, where the entire data transfer time is one bus clock cycle. Okay, in actual case this need not be the case. The synchronous bus protocol can be included as multiple clock cycle implementation also. Now we will see the real life case of a synchronous bus transfer. This is an idealized case, but in case of the real systems this is not the case. Okay, this will be a typical case of the real world systems, where there will be some delays for all the operations, and the delay seen by the various components will be also different. So we have two views here. The first view is the view by the master or view from the master side. The second one is the view from the slave side. Note that from the master side as well as the slave side, the clock cycle view is the same, or this signal is the only signal, or the bus clock cycle signal is the only signal that is seen as common by the master and slave, and that is done through intensive design. Okay, so we will start with this. So as our initiator is the master, we will start from the master side. So t0, master is supposed to put the address and command to be given to the slave, right? So actually it will put it at t0, but its bus driver circuits will be able to drive that information to the bus only by the time tam. Okay, so by tam only the required data will be put into the bus by the master. There will be a delay here introduced by the master, that is due to the delay in the driver circuit of the master. So by tam information, the address information for the slave as well as the command information for the slave will be available in the bus. Again, this is from the master's perspective. So at the master side the delay is only tam, but when we come to the slave side, the slave actually sees the address and command put by the master only at TAS, which is greater than TAM. Okay, you see both these things, TAM and TAS. TAS is greater than TAM, so delay experienced by slave is much more. Okay, so at TAS only the slave recognizes its address and the command put by the master. Then in the earlier case we saw that at T1 the slave should be ready with the address information, or the slave should be ready with the data to be supplied to the master, right? So here the case is exactly the same. By T1 the slave is supposed to be ready with the data to be given to the master. So if you see T1, the slave will actually try to put the data for the master into the bus, but again due to the electronic delay induced by the driver circuits of slave, at TDS only the slave will be able to put the data requested by the master. So this is from the slave's perspective, but when we go and see the master's perspective, data is seen by the master only at time TDM, which is greater than TDS. Okay, so the master sees the data put by slave only after a significant delay. Okay, but again by T2 the master recognizes or stops the data generated by the slave and the operation is deemed to be complete. So the interesting thing to note here is system designers will be aware of TAM and TAS. Okay, and they should design the interval T1 to T0 in such a way that it can cover the effects of both TAM and TAS, and the slave will be able to generate or able to complete the data processing required by T1. Okay, so the interval T0 and T1 will be determined like that. Then again, in case of the interval T2 and T1, or interval between T2 and T1, designers should see the TDS and TDM effect and should put this duration in such a way that it covers the effects of TDM, TDS as well as the stopping delay induced by the master. Okay, and so that is the main challenge in case of synchronous bus design. This clock cycle length should be in such a way that all these delays can be incorporated, and at specified durations the required operations are happening also. That should also be ensured. Okay, so at T1 the slave should be ready with the data, and at T2 the master should have received and registered the data within it. Okay, the clock cycle length should be sufficiently chosen. So that is one aspect of the main difficulty of designing a synchronous bus protocol. The clock cycle length should accommodate for all the delays. Then the next problem in the design of synchronous bus protocol is not all devices can respond within a duration set by the designers. Some devices will be extremely slow, some will be extremely fast. Suppose that the case that we are having now in case of figure 4.24 was the case of a RAM, right, as slave. So RAM might be able to respond to the CPU in within time T2 minus T0. But if you take the case of a hard disk, it need not be the case, right? A hard disk is 1000 times slower than RAM. So what happens is it might require 1000 times T2 length to actually complete the data transfer operation. So in that case we can't say that the operation should complete within all this one bus clock cycle, or if we are adamant on that, we have to extend the bus clock cycle width in such a way that it could accommodate for the delays introduced by or experienced by the slowest of the devices. So in that case this bus clock width should be at least a million times larger than that we see here to accommodate all the devices in a typical computer system, which is not usually feasible. Okay, so what can be a typical solution? So that should be thought about. Then another thing is here everything is like a timetable event, right? At T0 the master is supposed to put the slave's address and the command to be given to slave. At T1 the slave is supposed to recognize its address and the command given by the master, and at T2 the master is supposed to read or should have stopped whatever data was supplied by the slave. But there can be some cases where at T1 the slave might not have recognized that the master had demanded its service, or at T2 the master might have missed the data that was generated by the slave altogether. Okay, so there can be some cases like that, or in case can also be there in such a way that the slave might have failed. So what happens is at T2 the master might be actually reading a noise from the data lines and it will be stopping that as a valid input. So there should be some mechanism also which checks for whether the components of a bus protocol are actually live or not. Okay, so these three difficulties should be solved, or these are the main three difficulties posed by a synchronous bus protocol. That is, design of the bus clock cycle to accommodate for all the delays and the processing time of devices, and the response time of all devices are not unique. And the other thing is, in case of device failures or other physical events, there is no mechanism to inform each entities or each other, or there are no mechanism between entities to inform each other that a failure has occurred. So we can see one particular implementation where some of these problems are addressed. So that is a synchronous multi-cycle implementation. So if you see this synchronous multi-cycle implementation, the data transfer is not constrained to one bus clock cycle. It is actually supposed to extend across multiple clock cycles. Okay, again data transfer is done based on clock cycle signals, but the clock cycle signals are not rigid. They are actually flexible across multiple cycles. Okay, the data transfer is flexible across multiple cycles. And again another mechanism is introduced here, and this actually ensures the liveliness of the slave, or the slave is in proper condition. That is ensured by a signal known as slave ready. So this is a small attempt to solve the problems of synchronous buses, normal synchronous buses. So we will see how this actually solves some of the problems. So again here the data transfer is between a master and slave. Master has demanded a read operation or an input operation from the slave. Okay, so at the beginning of clock cycle 1, the master will put the address of the slave and the command to be given to slave. Delays will be there. So after the delay, by the first half of clock cycle 1 only, the signals will be available in the bus for the slave. Right, the address and command signals will be available to the slave. Then by the end of clock cycle 1, the slave have understood that it was selected by the master for a particular operation, and the operation is this one through the command. Okay, then the slave will start preparing the data. In this case it is an input operation, so it has to be given to the master. So slave will start preparing the data to be transmitted. And again here we can see that the slave is not constrained to be ready with data at the end of clock cycle 1. Okay, slave can prepare it according to its speed. So once it recognizes by the end of clock cycle 1 that it has been chosen and the operation has been requested by master, it will start preparing the data for the master. But how long it can prepare, that is left to it. Okay, it can take multiple clock cycles for preparation, but in this case only one clock cycle, that is clock cycle 2, is taken for preparation, and by the end of clock cycle 2 it is assumed that the slave is ready with data for the master. Then after accommodating the delay, the data from the slave is available in the bus, okay, by the mid of clock cycle 3. So again, as I told earlier, there should be some mechanism to inform the master that the data that is currently in the data bus is a valid data generated by slave. So that is indicated using another signal line, using known as slave ready signal line. Okay, so the slave ready signal will be actually triggered along with the data from the slave, and it indicates that whatever the master is going to see on the bus is some valid information or valid data from the slave. Okay, so this is one of the main deviation from our normal synchronous bus protocol, right? That is, the slave ready signal will actually indicate to the bus master that the slave is actually putting valid data on the bus. Okay, so actually slave ready compensates for two things. That is, it actually enhances the clock cycles the slave can take to prepare the data or to respond to the master's call, and it also acts as a indicator that the slave is in proper working condition. That is, the data generated by slave is a valid thing and not a noise. Okay, so by the end of clock cycle 4, the master might have understood that the slave is in proper form. It has completed the request from the master, and it is ready with valid data. And throughout and by the end of clock cycle 4, the master has completely stopped the data into it, or taken the data generated by slave into it. Okay, so again this operation is synchronized by the clock. In what sense? That is, the clock cycle 1 is used to generate and put address and command information to the bus by the master. Then so that is fixed in clock cycle 1. Clock cycle 1 is always fixed for the master to generate address and command information. Then the clock cycle in which the slave responds, that is fixed by the slave. It is indicated by the slave ready signal, and here it happens to be the third clock cycle. And the next immediate clock cycle is fixed for the master to stop the data generated by the slave. Okay, so here again there is a timing sequence. That is, first clock cycle always is for the master, who generates the address and control information for the slave. Then the clock cycle in which the slave ready is available. Okay, the clock cycle immediately after that, that is fourth clock cycle, is again fixed for the master to save or stop the data from the slave. Okay, so again there is a timing here with respect to clock cycle 1 and 4, right? The beginning and end is clearly demarcated. The in between clock cycles are actually decided by the slave, or the length of the in between transfers are actually decided by the slave. Okay, so this is an enhanced synchronous protocol, not a synchronous multi-cycle implementation.